Excellent.
All right, guys. Just being conscious of time. I think we can start. So, just doing a little introduction. My name is Sven Barrossum. I'm head of innovation at Fleet Europe. I want to welcome you all to this breakout session. How to turn your fleet to EV. We have with us today two people that some of you might already know. We have Mark Odinius, who is CEO of Dataforce. And we have Saul Lopez, who is e-mobility manager at Transport and Environment. Those will be your two hosts for this session. Please, if you have any questions, you can add them in the chat box that you can find on the right side of your screen. You can add any questions there, and at the end of the session, I will host a little moderation of Q&A, where we will answer, hopefully, if we still have some time, a couple of questions from the audience. There will also be two polls. We will make attention to that during the presentation. There will be two polls that also will be active throughout this breakout session. Those will be visible at the right time, so we will mention that, and then you can look at polls session and you will find the two polls there. All right, then without further ado, I think, Mark, you were going to kick off, so please go ahead and enjoy this session. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, and welcome to everybody joining our breakout session. I'm really happy that actually we can do a little part in this Fleet Europe Summit this year. My first breakout session together with somebody else. So I'm really chuffed to do this with Saul because we've been working a little bit together in the past months. And now we can just tell you a little bit of our results on different stuff. So you probably know me, so we can skip that one. Why your corporate fleet needs to turn to EV. This is something we want to try to answer. Why is already now the right time? And let me dip into COVID first. And I have some statements about COVID here, what it does for us in that sense, and how it influences that. And you see here the black swan. For me, it's a black swan event. That means nobody expected it in that way. Of course, you could plan for a pandemic, but you never know how it hits you when it hits you. And that's really, really difficult to foresee. Nobody foresaw it that way. And therefore, let's have a quick look how it hit us in terms of new car registrations. You see here the top 5 markets in Europe. That's mainly what I'm showing most of the time, just to give you a glimpse on the European market. And you can see that the first 2 months were okay. Then we really dipped down through the lockdowns, and it was near zero in some countries in terms of closure of dealerships, and we weren't able to actually register any new cars. Then this slide shows actuals until October. We actually recovered better than everybody expected. All the forecasting institutes and also ourselves, we thought it would be not like the V-shaped recovery, but it would drag out longer. So after we opened up again, we pretty much went pretty fast back to 100% of expected volume for this year, which is slightly lower than last year because that was a record year. But now just look at November, right at the end. I didn't put it to December. You can already see for France and the UK, it's going to be tough again because they are in lockdown again, and we probably will see lower levels again. So what does COVID do? COVID reduces registrations. Wow. Okay. And in fleet, it actually takes away 22% this year if we go on a full year. That means around 770,000 registrations less, which is quite considerable. And we think we will pick up about half next year again of that. So COVID will actually drag on quite a long time until we actually are back in shape as we were in 2019. Now, COVID showed us something else, not just that we have less cars on the road. COVID also showed us not to drive our car. And I think that's quite an important one because so far, and also here when we discuss alternative powertrain and we discuss car sharing and public transport and how to actually do it all more efficiently, we didn't really go as much into it like, okay, guys, so we can just leave our car where it is and not use it, or not use it as extensively as we did it before. And that is really, and I'm not talking about traveling or anything like holidays, but I'm talking about commuting. And commuting is a major part of our mobility. And what you see, what happened here for all the service businesses who could actually push their employees out, they reduced the mileage enormously. And in our leasing survey, which we just about to release, we asked this question: does home office and digitalization have an influence on your fleet? And if you look at it, 66% have a reduced mileage, which is not a surprise, but I think this is really cool because actually this is the best thing what we can do, not to emit anything, because we're not moving in that sense. Of course, we have our PCs working, but they work in the office as well. So this is another one. COVID showed us not to drive our car. And what happened during COVID, we actually saw the alternative powertrain share rise considerably. And now you can say, yeah, percentage-wise, now this is percentage-wise. Okay, in a declining market, you just need a few numbers and then you already can be in plus, even though the market is reducing itself. That means, okay, this looks good. And if you look at the percentage, it's 20%. I mean, we are coming from nowhere in 2016, about 1-2%. And now we are accessing in Q4, this is October, 20% in EU5. Not even counting all the Scandinavian countries, which would boost this thing even more. But now look, this is even more important. Is it a true rise? And if we look at the volume, it is a true rise, because you can see that the volumes of ICE is really, diesel, gasoline are really under pressure, and we are losing all the vehicles there. But actually, even due to COVID and due to the low figures you've seen, we managed to gain numbers, not just percentages, but numbers in terms of vehicles on the road with alternative powertrain in this crisis situation. And I think that's an important one. And if we just drill one deeper, let's go back. This is total alternative. And now this is one deeper, showing you green electric, hybrid, normal hybrid, red, and blue plug-in hybrid. And you can see for the EU5, we really have quite a high leverage on plug-in hybrids and also the EVs. And there you can see what politics does for you, because if you see the plug-in hybrid is really a subsidized rise as well, because now we can see it. Even if we go for Germany now, it would be even more higher than you can see it here in Euro 5. You would see it at 14%, because the subsidies are quite considerable. But nevertheless, we see rising demand and rising registrations, and there's more to come. Because just referring to just at start of COVID, we had a level playing field. Hybrids, normal hybrids, plug-in hybrids, and full battery electric vehicles shared a third each. And now electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids are already in the lead and really pushing for quite some numbers. Now, let's take a foreign source, LMC Automotive. Now, this is global. They are looking on how many models will be available. And if we look at the PEV, and I see PEV as a transition to full battery electric vehicles, and it gives you the experience of the real electric vehicle, because you have to plug and you have to maintain, the charge on the car and so on. But of course, the better way is to go full electric. And if we see 2022 already, the number of BEV models globally will surpass the number of PEV models. And if you look in the future, PEVs will just, ease up at about 130, 140 vehicles, and BEV is going strong in even doubling or let's say tripling the figures of 2020 easily in 24, and even going further with more than 200 models. If we take that to Europe, it's a bit less models, but the same phenomena is there, that we think that we're outgrowing with BEVs the PEVs quite soon. That's another one. So we have rising alternative powertrain, and we have better models, a better model range. Now, and there's another aspect. Company car drivers actually push now more for alternative powertrain. And we asked company car drivers in the next few years, or well, not even next few years, with the next company car, what will you do? What will you do? Would you change to an alternative powertrain vehicle? And 59% said at least, certainly, probably, or maybe, and said, okay, there's a true chance that I will change, which is quite a big number already. And if you see the reasons behind it, it's not all money. Quite a lot money with tax benefits and lower fuel costs, but you have environmental aspects actually leading the way with 68%. So therefore, I think there's a pretty big push from drivers, and we have another survey result here, because we asked fleet managers, on the contrary, before it was user choosers, now it's fleet managers, do you get inquiries more for alternative powertrain vehicles or not? And if you see, this is a German survey, and if you see at the bottom the number of vehicles involved here, you see with fleets with 10 plus vehicles, already 52% say, yeah, we have inquiries more frequently. And if you go higher with 100 plus, it's already more than 2/3 who say, yeah, we get more inquiries on alternative powertrain. And if you see what they are inquiring about, this is Germany. PHEV is really going strong at the moment in Germany, but you also have others like the BEVs with 25%. So there's also a push from the car driver himself into this market. Now, nevertheless, there's still things to do. So especially, I think, the short driving range for commuting, no problem. But the true range also is not always the true range in an electric vehicle, which is still somewhat difficult. But you saw how many models are arriving. And we have a lot of loading issues that it takes quite a long time. And we have the charging infrastructure. And those are the three anxieties, I would say, which we still have to cover. And you see that especially for the charging infrastructure, people want to charge at work and they want to charge at home. And they don't charge in public so much, which would mean that we really have to get our act together in terms of office charging and home charging, especially now with COVID. So guys, this is it. Hopefully I was just about in time here. And as I just previously had a LinkedIn vote, I tried polls on LinkedIn for the first time, and I just posted my next car will be. And I would like you to actually tell us what your next car will be. So please open the poll. That would be really nice, so that we can see what's what's happening here. And therefore, let's see if we can already
see. I've got the first results here already, Mark, which I can share with you.
Yep.
So the majority of people will say that my next car will be either EV or PHEV. So we're talking 80% right now of the people that have voted will say, okay, we're going to an electrified vehicle in the future. Diesel and gasoline are staying relatively at the same level at 8% each, maintaining.
Right. Now, if you just look at the slide, so my LinkedIn poll got about 65% of EV PHEV, even with the EV leading, which is interesting. And if you remember my slide before, people saying they want to change, that was 59% a few months back. So we already have. I mean, this is not representative, of course. But it's really showing that people are really on the move to make a change. And if it's even more worthwhile, I think, and why it's maybe financially interesting, Saul will touch on this now. So thank you for keeping me here. And I hand over now to Saul. And I hope we learn even more now about why we should actually turn EV.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mark. So Saul, you can share your screen already, and in the meantime, I'm gonna again address to our audience, which are with more than 100 people watching this breakout session. So that's good. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat session box, where we will address them at the end. Well, some of them address them at the end of this breakout session. All right, go ahead, Saul.
Okay. Yeah, first a very quick introduction. My name is Saul Lopez. I'm Spanish. I work for a Brussels-based organization, but I live in Paris. So there we go with a very nice mix. I am the mobility manager at TNE, and TNE stands for Transport and Environment. So first, a quick word on who we are, really. Sorry about that. Transport and Environment is Europe's leading clean transport campaign group. We have a mission, and it is a zero-emission mobility system that's affordable and has minimal impacts on our health, climate, and environment. We were founded in 1990, so we are a 30-years-old organization. We are a non-profit organization. We are politically independent. And what we do is basically analyze robust science-based facts, and we then draw our own conclusions, and we publish reports with policy recommendations for policymakers. And we do that while representing our members. We are an organization that represents other organizations, as you can see on screen. We have over 60 members that altogether represent over 3.5 million people across more than 25 countries in Europe. And therefore, we really fight for a better mobility system, one that's zero emission. So one of the things we recently did in relation with company cars is commission a study to Dataforce, like Mark mentioned. And we really worked hard for a few months to publish a comprehensive study. And what we found out, thanks to all the inputs that Dataforce provided, is that company cars today, as you probably already know, make up the majority of new registrations. So company cars are a huge driver for market demand, and they can really shape how the new car market develops in Europe. As you can see, almost 6 out of 10 new cars in Europe registered last year in 2019 were company cars. And in some countries, it even goes beyond that. In Poland, 71% of new cars are registered by companies. The only country among the top automotive markets in Europe, which is Italy, below 50%, it's Italy. All the rest of the countries, all the rest of the main automotive markets in Europe, they are all well above 50% share for corporate registrations. So what does this mean? Being an environmental organization, we of course automatically analyzed some figures and thought, well, we're subsidizing pollution here. Why? Because, as you know, companies get VAT deductions and depreciation write-offs when they buy cars. And that we're perfectly fine with that. It's nice to help companies buy the vehicles they need to conduct their businesses. No problem with that. But when you check out those 32 billion euros spent last year in those 9 European markets that you see on screen, and then you cross that data with what type of powertrains were being bought on those vehicles, you realize that actually 96% of the cars bought last year were powered by diesel or petrol, and they were subsidized. So that's definitely not right, because you very well know the effects of climate change, and you know the effects on our health of bad air quality because of the exhaust pipe emissions. So that, of course, needs to change. But it's not the only reason. We also see, and I'll skip these details here because we are short on time, I believe. But you see that the company cars are more polluting than the privately owned vehicles just because they are driven more. And that's why we say we need to do something about this. Actually, when we look at the market, we think the company cars should already be, all of them should already be electric. The graph that I'm displaying here, the bar chart, shows the top 10 internal combustion engine car models for corporate registrations last year. The king is the Volkswagen Golf. It achieved over 280,000 registrations, and then it's followed by the Renault Clio with 193,000 registrations, and the rest of the list is there. one of the problems that people was mentioning a few years back was that, well, there's just not enough electric vehicles available to choose from. So that's why we're buying internal combustion engine, we're buying petrol and diesel cars. But if you look at this list, the Volkswagen Golf, it actually exists as an electric vehicle. The Renault Clio, well, we don't have a Clio electric, but we have a Renault Zoe. So when you look at the list of electric vehicles registered through the corporate channel last year, the top 10, you will see that you always find an equivalent powered by an electric powertrain for the diesel or the petrol that was bought in 2019. So we're wondering, why is it that companies do not buy more electric vehicles? And then we looked at some figures, and this is the important part of my presentation, and we realized that they are actually cheaper. So you have the models and they are cheaper. I'm not talking about the sticker price. I'm talking about the total cost of ownership. They are cheaper to run. We made a calculation. We compared a Mercedes C-Class. We took a diesel, the C180D, and we also took a hybrid, a plug-in hybrid, the C200E, which is a plug-in electric vehicle. And we compared it to the Tesla Model 3. And we came up with this, which I'm going to explain. We based our calculations on the following assumptions. We know that company cars are driven 27,000 kilometers per year. We took a 4-year ownership period. We then, of course, also took into account the charging infrastructure investment. We took into account the electricity and fuel costs. We also considered a leasing contract with an 8% finance rate. We calculated residual values, setting them at 35%. We added tax, benefits, subsidies. We added maintenance and we added insurance for 4 years. And the results were the electric vehicle costs 0.37 cents per kilometer, while the diesel costs 0.41 euro. So that's an electric vehicle over 4 years is 9% cheaper than the diesel. The Tesla Model 3 as a company car, under the assumptions that I just mentioned, is 9% cheaper than the Mercedes diesel. It's 4,320 euros that you will save over those 4 years with these calculations. And we then also looked at a smaller segment, the compact segment, the C segment. We ran the same calculations with a Nissan Leaf, a Toyota Prius, and a Skoda Octavia, and it's actually 12% cheaper. The cost per kilometer of the Nissan Leaf is 30 cents of euro, and the hybrid, the Toyota Prius, costs 31 cents, and the diesel Skoda Octavia costs 34 cents. So then our big question is, why only 2% of electric vehicle registrations in companies last year then? Why? And we are, of course, very well aware of the charging infrastructure bottleneck. We know the challenges companies are facing. We know how difficult it can be to equip an office building, all the cabling, all the charging stations, the permits, the local regulations. We are aware of those challenges. And we know that that is the bottleneck that we need to sort out in order to accelerate the uptake of electric vehicles in companies. People need to have somewhere to charge, either when they are in the office and the car is in the parking space on the ground, or overnight charging when they are at home. That is why we are working at EU level with the EU institutions with the revision of the Alternative Fuels Infrastructure Directive. And we want to change all these things so that everybody has a right to plug. But also, on the company side of things, we would really recommend fleet managers to review the fuel cards policies and the EV charging stations installation, because sometimes your employees cannot perhaps charge in the office because there are regulations or whatever, but they could perhaps install a charger at home. So these are the things that we need to be looking at, because like I said, if you run the numbers, if you check the data and make the total cost of ownership calculation, you will see that not only there are electric vehicles available that could replace the current petrol and diesels in your fleets, but also they are cheaper. They will save you money. So having said all this, and I leave you here my email address in case you want to discuss things further and you have questions to ask. I also encourage you to go to the polling section where we have prepared, one question for you. Now that the total cost of ownership for electric vehicles in fleets makes economic sense, what do you think will be the key driver for accelerating employee uptake of electric vehicles? You can now go ahead and vote, I suppose.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Saul. I'm just being conscious of time. We still have a few minutes left. So if I just look at the poll that you just mentioned, Saul, indeed, more than 50% is saying charging infrastructure is definitely key there. So you also mentioned that is still the bottleneck. And I saw one of the questions in the chat box popping up. How important is actually the cost or the investment that comes with setting up a corporate charging infrastructure? How important is that in saying no right now to electric vehicles? How big is that part?
It's an important part, and I strongly recommend you get advice from an expert, because very often the companies trying to sell the equipment, or even the car maker trying to sell the vehicle together with their own charging equipment, will have a tendency to overestimate the charging needs. I don't want to get too technical here, but the thing is, the more expensive the charging equipment, that will mean it will be supplying more power and it will be charging much faster. So you will need less time to charge your battery. And salespeople will always have a tendency to sell you the bigger, more powerful, and more performant piece of equipment. But does that really suit your needs? Is that really what you need? Most of the time, it's not. Most of the time, the distance you drive on a daily basis, let's say 50 kilometers, maybe 100 kilometers, you can top up the battery that you used to drive that distance in 6-7 hours while you sleep. And to do that, you only need the cheapest version. You need the small power basic charging station. So that drives the investment needs down drastically. So that's my suggestion. You can charge an electric vehicle with low power, so low cost, low investment. Try and explore those options before going for the big investment, big equipment.
Correct. So be realistic with what is need and requirement. All right, fine. Thank you. Mark, one question for you, and I think then we already have to stop. But I saw some interesting charts, obviously, coming from you. We see that alternative fuels are rising. Makes sense. And we see that COVID has accelerated that significantly, or at least that's what we can see in the numbers. How big does that differ from, let's say, pre-COVID estimations? I mean, did we expect it really not to increase so drastically, or is there, or did we expect it anyway pre-COVID as well?
No, of course, we expected a rise due to all the regulations which are out there, because the manufacturers need to achieve their goals too. So they had to push out low emission vehicles into the market in order not to get fines, to reduce the fines. So therefore we expected that there's more coming. But the way now we saw it now, I would say we are 5 percentage points ahead of what we thought we could be at this time. And that's, I think, and that won't change again, because we will change the way we use cars. Already we're changing it now, and I think we're not going totally back to pre-COVID, even if COVID is over. And therefore, I think we really have a good chance to get this momentum going further, especially if the cost is coming down all the time, and it makes more sense because people don't have to commute so long. And now quite a lot of vehicles are an alternative to go alternative.
All right, great. Well, thank you very much, Mark. Thank you very much, Saul. I think this was a very interesting session. I still see a lot of questions that are in our chat box. I will share that with both of you, so you can address the people asking the questions personally, of course, and make sure that we can provide them with some responses. For all the audience, thank you for being with us. I think the next session is really about all meeting the sponsors. So who are the suppliers that can offer you, let's say, that electric future? So meet the sponsors at the village. You can do that by clicking on the left-hand side and visit the different booths of our sponsors. Thank you very much, and thank you for being with us.